Hi everyone, it's Guillaume from Startup Basecamp. Welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. During the show, you will have the opportunity to meet the best climate tech founders, investors, and experts from both Silicon Valley and around the globe. They will share with you their stories and personal journeys into this growing and exciting industry, giving you some insight into the ecosystems that help you to take part in the fight against climate change and benefit from the opportunities it can represent. The podcast is divided in two small interviews. During the first part, you will get to know our speakers, their perspectives on the climate crisis and how climate tech is changing the game. The second part of the discussion will be for members of our community who will learn the speakers' secret sauce on how to and share with you their unique expertise on topics such as fundraising, management, strategy, and so on, to help you to become a better leader in your field. So before we start, I would like to quickly share what we are doing at Startup Basecamp to support climate tech founders in accessing resources and gaining visibility with investors they seek. Our initiatives include a membership-based community platform offering access to a dedicated Slack group with a growing number of founders, experts, and investors from around the world, and a series of exclusive content such as interviews, weekly job listings, events, and our quarterly online pitch of night opportunity. But more than a place where you can learn, exchange, and grow, we are building a matchmaking service to facilitate connections between our members and top investors and experts in the field. And soon, alongside with other top investors, we will be launching a small fund to co-invest in the growth and acceleration of our members. Finally, all of this is possible because of your support and donations. We are a small self-funded team, and we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. So please share one episode with a friend and subscribe to the channels. As an added bonus, we will plant a tree for each of our subscribers each time we reach 1,000 new fans or donors. Do not hesitate to connect with me via social media or email guillaume@startupbasecamp. Thanks a lot for listening. I hope to get in touch with you soon. And now, let's go for the show. Hi everyone, to this episode we are speaking with Björn Witte, Managing Partner and CEO at Blue Horizon. It was very interesting to have Björn on the show and learn about the food tech sector for someone who has significant experience first as an operator and then as an investor in the sector. Björn now works for Blue Horizon, a next-generation impact investment firm with a lifecycle investment philosophy. Their mission is to fill a role in the food system by understanding what drives the market and use it to produce a double positive return on investment. One for the investors, the other one for the planet. Björn began his career restructuring companies but quickly shifted over to the food tech space as a way to make more impact. He began to work a lot with farmers in India and in Asia to build up their productivity, and at one point even became a shareholder in a food production company. Eventually, he met Roger, Blue Horizon founder, and decided to join the firm. He now leads a diverse team across entrepreneurship, finance, and academia with 78 deals across the world. Björn is passionate about food, a passion that he uses to guide us on a journey across the food tech ecosystem, the world's largest market. In our discussion, Björn specifically hones in on alternative protein as a means to produce the greatest impact, but how? What are the key drivers of the market? What are the major roadblocks? How does he respond to critics of the Frankensteinization of the food system? How can innovation in the sector fast track our goal towards zero emission? That's all you guys gonna discover during the show. In the second part of this show, Björn explained what advice he has for founders looking to fundraise or enter the food tech space. Also gives a few recommendations on books, TV shows, and reports he has used to understand food tech and climate tech more generally. Björn, welcome to the show.
Hi Björn, welcome to the Tech for Climate podcast. I'm super happy to have you here with us today, especially since you guys released an in-depth report in collaboration with BCG, Food for Thought, the underestimate climate opportunity. So I'm looking forward to this great opportunity to hear your story, all the findings that you found during that report, and get up to speed on what you guys are looking at with Blue Horizon. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Guillaume. Very happy to be here. Looking forward to spending the next time with you and share a bit of my passion, our passion as Blue Horizon, to be the next generation impact investor and help to transform this industry.
So before we start, that's a tradition in the show now. Can you please give us a 30-second introduction about Blue Horizon?
Sure, thank you. So Blue Horizon is a next generation impact investor. We have a life cycle investment philosophy. So we do start very early with seed investments and go across the life cycle into venture and growth. We have invested in 78 deals by now. Therefore, it's a global company. We are driven by impact. We have a unique combination of highly diverse team with a mix of entrepreneurship, finance people, and academia. And as I said, we have a very important mission to fill a role in the transformation to a sustainable food system by understanding what drives the market and having a double positive, what we say is a positive return for the investors, where we target 3x returns, but also a positive return for the planet, which is impact.
So I'll start from the top. Can you tell us a bit more about your personal story and background? I mean, what are you passionate about? What do you do besides working on supporting and investing in founders? What makes you feel inspired like your best self? As I always ask, who's Björn?
I'm an entrepreneur. I'm driven by impact. I have two little daughters, 4 and 5. I think it's crucial to understand the role of the food system in today's environment, and actually the impact the food system has on everybody and will have in the next years. And it's a very critical moment to be in this space. And I've been personally in the food space for the last 15 to 20 years. I'm turning 50 very soon in the next 2 years. I'm a vegan in my 5th year, but we're not a vegan company. We're mass market, driven by technology, mass market company to create impact and returns. But my passion is really in food. I've spent the last 15 years in food along the full value chain. Started my career in restructuring companies and reorganizing companies. And then, as I always say, quickly shifted at the right point in my life, shifted the PowerPoint reality to reality. And went into the food system and actually looked at the full value chain, worked a lot with farmers, spent a lot of time in India and Asia, worked with smallhold farmers, increased their productivities, built up supply chain businesses, was a bit in the ingredient space myself. At one point of time had the chance to actually own my as majority shareholder, a food production company, and exited a couple of companies on the way. And then met Roger, who had actually founded Blue Horizon. And in 2017 was that. In 2018, then I decided to join. And ever since, the rest is history. I think we've built a unique setup. And I'm very passionate about impact, about creating better solutions. I'm not passionate to convince people to eat vegan. I'm passionate to have the best products that people value chain, since I have a big experience along the full value chain. I bring that to the table.
So you mentioned already this long and busy, I would say, work-life experience that you had so far. If you maybe could share with the audience like one or two what I call more like gold nuggets of experiences that you learned along the way, and that in a way gave you an edge to be a CEO of the fund.
Yeah, I think I have a unique combination of having been an investor, but also an operator in the space. And I had a chance to really see hands-on what it means on the on the operator side, and actually having co-founded companies, but also ran larger companies in that sense without going into the too corporate world. I think there are a few takeaways which you can apply to in this world of very exciting founders. And if you look at business plans, by now we get 2,000 to 3,000 decks a year, which inbound. So globally, people wanting us to become shareholders, especially on the earlier stage. And having been operationally, I think there are a couple of things I'll take away. One example is if you go upstream and look into increasing productivity on the farm level. And this goes all the way down to this very fancy ideas of, I would say, indoor farming, for instance, right? I love the concept of indoor farming with the climate change, but ultimately I always say, listen, make a very small Excel file, put 2 lines in it. One is called yield and the other one is called cost. Then you put a greenhouse from Holland, from a Dutch greenhouse, and then put your business plan, just these 2 numbers next to it, and do a comparison. All the PowerPoint, everything goes away. And ultimately, when you scale up, just compare these 2 numbers. So I think it's an ability to then evaluate and take judgment calls quickly based on experience, based on very basic things, which, like the example I gave you, where I think you always need to think, what's my real business case? And I think there's a lot of shift currently with all the markets, and we're probably going to speak about this a bit later. But I think that's a basic thought, having worked on the ground with farmers on the agri side, and on the other side, really understanding that food, even if it's food tech, it's not tech, right? So you can't develop a product and then put it on an app store and then it's distributed. And I think that in the past years, people were really hoping that this somehow would work and the same valuation multiples and everything would scale as fast as tech does, but it doesn't, right? So you always have to understand what is really the food angle to this without, acknowledging that maybe in food, and I speak less about disruption, I speak more about transformation. So I think we need to include the existing infrastructure and see what we don't have the money or the capacity to rebuild everything, like maybe you can do it in a disruptive software way, but we have to integrate the existing players somehow. Ultimately, we don't get scale, and if we don't get scale, we don't have impact. So being driven by impact, as I said, we have to see for ways, how do we believe in innovation, which comes out of what I believe smaller structures, and not the big companies for different reasons. And I think we need to integrate that. And I think that's the second big takeaway, is to say, don't rethink everything, especially as an investor. Don't forget the basic rules, which I had to look at the KPIs. Ultimately, businesses need to make money, have a positive cash flow. That's also the best protection against dilution for the founders, and make sure that you have the right partners with you to achieve your goals of impact, but also commercially, of course.
So before we go into details, and we'll dig into the overall context of the food tech and the alternative protein landscape today, I'd like to understand, and we asked that a lot in the show, to understand what was your driver in a way to jump into this clean climate tech of food clean tech, if I can call it like that. Do you have any specific moments that you could recall, or that you would define as such?
I think the moment you dive into the topic, and I was reading a lot about the correlation of meat consumption and the per capita consumption of meat, and the income per capita. So there's a very clear correlation when you say, okay, for every dollar a family earns more per head, how does the consumption of meat look like? And if you look at that data and you plot it out, and no matter what source you see, there's a very strong correlation. Not so much in India, but even if you look at the US, so it's a straight line to say these 2 axes. Now, understanding that, and we can argue which year it will be, but one day that we most likely will be 10 billion people on this planet in the next 30 years. And it's simply not sustainable. In the way, if you eat like the Swiss do today, or the Germans, we would probably need 3 times the planet. And if you eat like the Americans, you probably need 5 planets. And to understand that this is something very imminent, and it's not like an electric car where you take a decision to buy one probably every 3 or 5 years, so you need to be convinced that it's a feasible concept. Most people we talk to have the luxury of having the choice 3 times a day, 21 times a week, to say, what do I eat? And I think ultimately understanding that this is a solution with a really big impact, and the impact is 70-80% bigger than all transport combined. So every plane, every truck, every big ship combined has way less impact on the planet than a sustainable food system. Is massive. And the more you read into it, and I'm not even talking about the health aspect. And for me, when I turned vegan 5 years ago, nearly 6 now, for me it was more the health aspect, and I just took blood tests, and it worked really, really well. All the reds went into the black again after a couple of weeks. So that's a personal experience. But I think combining the impact thinking, then having when my wife gave birth to 2 daughters, and making that a very big milestone in the thinking, I think this for me was really a changer. And having been in food and seeing that ultimately there's a chance to have a product where you will speak about this, about cost point, price points, about the generation of food and where it's heading, where we are today. I'm a big believer we're just in the very beginning, and it's so exciting to be a part of a very purposeful mission and trend in a way, and to have a team of very intrinsically motivated people, which I managed together with the team around us, which is very driven by impact plus returns. That's what market returns need to give anyways. But I just feel we'll be on the right side of history with what we do, and it's just the very beginning. It feels like when we started, and now it's like the beginning of the internet. And then Björn Witte came out, and the IPO came out, and then suddenly people started to put hard facts out there. And right now, I feel it was the right choice to go into this field. And I think this was really the time when I read about all this data, and then having tasted the products, and all the vegan proteins came out at the time, and tasting and seeing always the next generation, the speed of adoption and development. I think that's what motivated me to become what I do today. I think it's my last job I want to do in my life. It's not even a job. It's more than a job. It's really about the passion in doing that.
So let's take a zoom out and a step back, as I was mentioning to you at the beginning of the interview. I'd like to get a little bit of your sense in terms of the food tech ecosystem and its potential to contribute to the fight against climate change today. Maybe you can start, and you already mentioned that quickly now, some data points regarding the impact of food production and consumption on the climate crisis. Then maybe you can give us a little bit of this, your own overview on the food tech landscape today. I mean, what are the fundamentals that drive the food tech market today? Where do you see major innovation happening? It's a large question, so we'll try
I'll just start
deconstruct everything.
Yeah, so to start off, I think that it's very exciting because it's the biggest market in the world. Food is the biggest market in the world. It's 4 times the size of software. And of course, that's a very big number. It's very global, but also food is the most decentralized market, because you have a lot of different taste profiles and localizations. So it's a massive market. And within this market, we believe that there is a very big portion of, there's a mass consumption of animals today, which has a very negative impact if you take that with greenhouse gas, land use, water use. And there's pretty good data points around this by now, and everybody speaks only about beef, and the beef is becoming the coal of food, and it's so bad, and it's depending on the times when you look into the magazines. But within this market, it's not only about meat, right? It's about everything related to animal proteins. And our mission as Blue Horizon, for impact reasons, is literally to say, let's take out the living animal from the food chain, and we'll have a massive impact. And the massive impact, as I mentioned, is really that compare it to, I mean, number one is energy by far, but then again, not so much by far, and everybody's focused on energy, the biggest contributor to greenhouse gas. And then it's followed by the food system. And then only transport only comes afterwards. And what we see is that everybody's focused on energy. Even COP26, people meet at in Glasgow and they discuss energy transitions. But I think ultimately, then if you go out to the break and have a nice steak to discuss that further, it's maybe not what you should be doing. So to give you the data points, number one is energy, number two is the food system, 70% to 80% more impact on the climate than any transportation has, and I think that's the basic data point. And the ability to change or to have impact on that system by offering better products to the end consumer, where they ultimately take a change to shift to or transition to newer products. That's a big goal, but it's doable. And the key drivers behind this, I'll come to in a second, but I think everything we see, it's going in that direction. So given numbers with a 2% penetration of alternative proteins in the whole protein market today, the last studies which we did together with the Boston Consulting Group, we expect this, depending on the assumption, to go up to 10 or 11 or 22% in the next 10 to 15 years. So it's a 10x in terms of penetration. And the key drivers are rather simple in food. In food, you need to have four things. Most important, taste. If it doesn't taste good, you don't buy it again as a consumer. The second one is availability. If it's not a mass market product, you can't buy it, you simply don't buy it, and then the taste doesn't work. So availability, mass market. So you have to play the rules of the mass market. Then you have to look at trust. Unless you have a trusted product, maybe branded product, right? Then, or not brand, but even a trusted product, you don't buy it. And the last, which is always neglected by some of the studies, but it's price. So the price, if you can't feed your family, you don't care about the planet that much. You just go for the price when you go shopping in mass markets. So all of these four drivers, we believe, are on the right track. Of course, it's a transition. There's more things to do, but ultimately, there are three core technologies driving this market of alternative proteins. The first one is plant-based, so it's like a Beyond Meat burger today, or some plant-based chicken, where you use a fairly traditional technology which was used in dog food some 20 years back, right? Because what came out had to look like meat, so you buy it and feed it to your dog. So the extrusion technology has become much more enhanced. It has more, it's a high moisture extrusion process, or to say it resembles quite a lot to I'll stick with chicken, right? So a chicken product today really looks like and feels like a chicken. You can produce that today with plant-based already. The second technology is fermentation. Also fermentation, it's a fairly old concept, but what has changed, that by now you have a precision fermentation technology, which is literally you take a recipe which is based on the DNA of a certain product, and then you rebuild with this recipe a protein to do exactly what you want it to do, and you put that in a controlled environment, and then ultimately you take out of a fermentation process, you suddenly can replicate an egg white, or you can replicate certain things where you see at the beginning of the value chain, you can produce a fungicide which eats the fungus, a bug eating the fungus, but you can scale it and it's very precise. But that's a second core technology, which is very, very interesting for now. The third one is what is often being referred to as clean meat. So it's lab-grown meat or lab-grown cells. Also here, it's not something that new. If you look to medicine, if you have a burnt skin, if you go to hospitals, you take a cell, you put it to the lab, you let it grow, and then you use that tissue again. Different price point, right? We're looking again at mass market. So I'm explaining these three things because what we are seeing as investors and looking at the landscape is obviously these three technologies emerging. I think the scaling up really helps to bring down the price point. So on the plant-based, as we speak today, from a pure cost perspective, we're able to replicate a chicken breast, which would go into a nugget, at less of the cost of a real chicken breast, which you could buy anywhere in the world, in Thailand or Brazil, for something, I don't know, $2.60 or something per kg, very low price, but the highest value of a chicken. But this you can replicate with a plant-based ingredient, and then a lot of the taste profile anyway comes from the breading, and that's why. So that's interesting because price is coming down, and as we speak, based on the ingredients, you can have I never speak of cheap food, that's what you should not do, but you can produce an affordable chicken nugget, and that's why maybe some of the big fast food chains are also pushing in that direction. I'm not sure if they do it because they love animals. I just believe they do it because they can make more margin, right? And ultimately, that's part of the driver is the cost. So the cost, the taste profile, and then is working already on the plant-based. If you add some ingredients, which you do with a second core technology, which is fermentation, they can, for instance, produce ingredients which have still a fairly high price point, but you add 1% of ingredient to a plant-based product, and suddenly it makes up 90% of the consumer experience. So what do I mean? You have a plant-based cheese, and then which doesn't stretch. So cheese for me also, it's a difficult thing. It's not that cheesy yet, but if you have the next generation of ingredients which you can ferment and then add a little bit to your plant-based cheese, and suddenly cheese stretches. So you have a pizza with stretching cheese, and it's a fantastic step forward by having a small piece. And I'm trying always to give example outside of the meat. So this really gives you also in the dairy space and other space a much better product. So that technology will probably scaling up takes another 2 to 5 years, but then also there. The price points will be the same as the animal protein, and mixing the two already now with the first one going down below and the price umbrella, the reference point of meat going up, and everything, all the poor things we see today in the world with the war, with the energy crisis, with everything, climate change, it only accelerates what we do on these 2 points because the reference umbrella of animal protein price only goes up right now, and we only go down. So I think that's a big shift as a driver. And cell-based, I think this will still take time. We believe it's another 8 years out, 8 to 10 years. There's a lot of regulatory challenges to be overcome. Who's going to regulate it? Is it safe? How is the consumer going to react to it? But there will be early adopters, such as, and also I must tell you, I just came back from Israel a few weeks back, and had one of our portfolio companies have the latest chicken sausage product from the bioreactor, where you have 10% chicken fat cells blended into a plant-based sausage. It's amazing. It's simply, I always say everything you buy today is an iPhone 5. I tend to happen not the latest. I have like 11 or 12. I know people with an iPhone 7 on the table, but nobody with an iPhone 5. But all the products you buy today is an iPhone 5, full stop. But the next 18 months, we see the products, we see the iPhone 7, 8, 9 going to the market, and then immediately the adoption curve will be driven up. And with cell-based, it's already this product, which I had, was an iPhone 10, minimum, 11, 12, because the next product was a cell-based chicken product where you don't have the structure of a T-bone, T-bone, it's not about T-bone, it's about mass market, pulled chicken, all that. And if you do that in a chicken burger, and 40% is like a real chicken cell grown in the lab, blended into a plant-based product, fantastic. And once it's on your table, it's not a question if it's going to happen, it's just a question when it's going to happen. So we have a defined timeline to look into that. And for us, it's plant-based now, the fermentation in the next upcoming years, and then the cell base is a bit out. But all of these three things will happen in the next 10 to 15 years. And that's literally nothing in history. And we see all indicators that the question not only about sustainability, but also about food security. If countries import today all 70-80% of the grains from countries like Russia or Ukraine, suddenly for political reasons, either they don't get it or they don't want to buy it. So there's a big pressure to think the food system more local, more tech-oriented, more safer. And these core technologies, and I said again, the full value chain needs to be part of it. If you don't start in the beginning, you don't have good end products. You need to start at field level. I think it's hugely exciting to see the main drivers coming into play. To repeat the first one, taste profile, yes, it's coming, it's there, and the innovation speed of the next releases is coming. The second one, we say it's mass market, yes, that's a function also of the price point, but also the ability to scale up now, where you have companies where you don't only look into the tech risk or the brand risk, but it's really about scaling up and enabling that, and that drives the price point down. And then suddenly something comes in quite interesting. That's the brand. Today, globally, there's no brand in meat. There's no, brand in certain categories because it can't deliver on consistency of the brand promise. But suddenly in our alternative protein space, you can do that. So a lot of this market of the branded business suddenly becomes open to either be on a private label for the big retailers, so for them it's also a big change, or for the branded business to say, okay, I give a certain promise on the brand of the taste and associate yourself to this. And I think that's a unique opportunity with all the knowledge and know-how which exists in other categories suddenly being applied to this category. It's hugely exciting.
Thanks. You covered a lot already. All of my questions get a little bit mixed up, but I like to understand a little bit, in terms of growth, which subcategory of the alternative protein is growing the fastest? I mean, what's the market adoption so far? How is the consumer reacting to it? I mean, you mentioned that it was like close to 2% or like way lower than that. So there's always this concern about Frankensteinization of our food system. You guys are betting on those alternative protein at first. So how do you see the reaction? I mean, who are those early adopters in the market, and maybe how big food players, the Nestlé's of this world and Cargill and others are positioning themselves regarding that. And you mentioned already the chicken nuggets by McDonald's. If probably that was the company that you are not naming it, but tell us a bit more about. So tell us a little bit, and to summarize here, which category are subcategories are growing the fastest. What is the current situation in terms of the market adoption? Where are we at? Who is the early adopters? And is this fear of Frankensteinization is there or not? And I guess the big guys are taking advantage of it.
Yes. So, listen, the consumer perception of this, it's still new, but it needs to be differentiated amongst age groups and obviously amongst regulatory environments. Like in Europe, there's no GMO. In the US, Asia, it's no problem, right? So that's a principle, different mindsets on consumers on food in principle. What we see is the growth is it's there and it's going to accelerate, but even in times where stock markets have come down and the only two stocks in our space, which is Oatly and Beyond Meat, have been also hit, maybe not as much as other tech stocks, but also have come down quite a bit. I think it's very important to put the consumer first. And what we did with what Verizon did with BCG now in the second study this year, which we just released, it gives you a couple of insights. What, from a consumer perspective, what does it take to take the next level? And it was very interesting to see, with 3,700 consumers in 7 countries surveyed, a lot of consumers are aware of alternative proteins, but they would switch even more if a couple of things would be realized. One of them, you have to add more value to the product to be charging a premium price. If you don't have a premium product, you can't charge a premium price. And that's a bit of a challenge because a lot of consumers have been rightly so, for certain products saying, oh, it's plant-based, but it's not healthier. Why is that? Because you're in mass market, you look at all the ingredients list, and then, you don't have the real ingredients list of a piece of chicken with everything which has been injected into that over time. But it's okay. The ingredients list of some of the products are simply too long and not that healthy yet. It's highly processed, and there are a lot of products which we believe, also where we invest, which are more in the clean meat direction, and the clean, healthy ingredients list direction. And I think that's one of the key findings is, okay, premium product, if you add premium, and health is that's the next big topic, driven by ingredients, but also by the categories. So we believe in a category from a consumer perspective, we do see with innovation coming that we're just in the very beginning. As I said, of penetration rate, we will see an increase adoption rate, and therefore an acceleration of the market in the next 2 to 3 years again. And we strongly believe in that. One of the main findings also is that if we would make consumers understand more about the climate impact, I think also that this would also drive it, assuming that, as I said before, the price continues to come down and it's passed on to the consumers. And I think that's, from a consumer perspective, a key point to say, okay, what is the next step? It's health, it's about transparency, it's about being a trusted brand and availability. But I think also there will be quite some consolidation now to be able to offer the consumer what they're used to. Today in certain markets you suddenly have 20 different burgers or all these different things. You're overwhelmed as a consumer. You don't really understand what is the brand, what's the brand promise, and why is this better than the rest. So this needs a little bit of cleanup, which happened in other categories before. So meat, yes. I think dairy, we've seen a lot of alternatives in dairy, but I think dairy will see a big shift the moment that the core technology of fermentation is scalable, and you will be able to, produce the key ingredients, and then suddenly you can use the existing infrastructure of the big dairy players. So if you have a casein, which you use for cheese, and then you have it produced, and you can supply it to the existing infrastructure and don't need to rebuild everything. I think this will be driving a lot of that category. Plus, the consumer will really appreciate, the taste profile which he grew up with in this category, that it really resembles much more. In the future, I think one category which we are also looking at quite actively, which has not yet been tapped, is below the sea, right? The whole sea life. Where don't want to make advertising for Netflix and Seaspiracy, but literally, if you look into that type of information and you understand that there's a big impact on the planet, also with sea life in the ocean, which has been hammered and still is as we speak, and so the fish replacement, the shellfish replacements with alternative proteins, we believe will be a big shift, and will have a category where a lot still needs to be developed. Innovative products, we see them either be a shrimp or fish replacement, but that's a category which I believe will really go out. And to make the bridge to the second part of the question on how do the big players look into that, my view is it's great if the big established players do category management and category marketing. They have big dollars to spend, which none of the startups or young growing companies have. So if there is a product on plant-based tuna, which is being promoted pea-based and by one of the big companies and put into the shelf, and then trying to educate consumers about this, I think it's great. So it's a combination of both, because ultimately it's not the enemy. The enemy is the climate change and the big impact. So everything need to join forces to fight that. And therefore, I think the level of innovation is sometimes surprising from big corporates, but most of the times, as I believe, it comes from smaller structures. And therefore, we see an increasing amount of younger companies which are then very often being contacted by large organizations, either to be acquired or to have certain partnerships. So I think that's the new model to see how do we bring innovation into traditional food production. And probably some of these ingredient companies, and where we see a lot of B2B companies emerging with innovative ideas to say, okay, let's not take the brand risk, let's sell the shovels to the gold diggers and position ourselves a bit more upstream and see if we can have a specific product to decompose the value chain and say, okay, I have a very specific solution for one challenge, but I'm the best. We continue to see that, and that's very interesting. And I think ultimately, once we reach a certain scale as an industry, this will again drive the impact. But it's still nascent in many pieces. If you look at the cost structures of a lot of the companies we look at, the transformation cost compared to the raw material, since the scale is not big enough, the transformation cost is still much higher than in the traditional meat industry, for instance. And the raw material is lower. So bringing down the costs, scaling up, this will drive and this will bring the interest of the established players even more into that direction to promote it, because ultimately the margins will come back in the space. You have a security in the supply chain, hopefully, once you set it up. And therefore, there's a big interest of the big corporates to be part of this. We've seen a couple of bigger deals, big meat players acquiring companies, and I expect this to continue.
So can you tell us, and this is going to be my last question around the environment in general before digging into Blue Horizon. So maybe according to you, like what are the European Union's, advantages and weaknesses in regards to alternative protein? I mean, how do you compare the EU countries versus the US in large or the rest of the world? I mean, do you see any major roadblock? And what needs to happen in a way to accelerate the movement in which and in which timeline sounds realistic to you in terms of alternative protein adoption?
I think from a consumer perspective, the Europeans have been partially quite progressive, especially the UK. It's in our market a pretty established market. The Dutch have been traditionally very strong food, and the German, of course, it's a tough market, but price-wise, but also the level of innovative products. If you look at Mintel data, they have been quite high, second after the US, only in terms of innovation in food, what is being brought to the shelf. So from a consumer perspective, I think there's a strong belief in this, and by definition, especially the link to climate, the Europeans have been very much aware not only about carbon. I think the US is still much about carbon, but I think the European mindset from a consumer is still ahead of that, really understanding that there's big impact to do. From a technology perspective, I think Europe has a big potential. There has been a lot of traditionally talking about machinery, goods, industry. There's a lot of food. There's a lot of pharma, and partially also money involved, which you need to support that. However, the venture capital on the earlier stage in the seed is much stronger in the US. That's also where this industry originated from. And without certain donors and putting 50 million into, let's have the next generation burgers and let's see if it works or not. I don't mind if it costs like 5,000 a patty, and the cost will come down. So this mindset of the US really helped initially to launch this industry. But now I think the challenge is that we in Europe, we care a lot about the food safety, which is fantastic, and we just need to be careful not to lose a little bit the traction. I think the whole shift is an opportunity of this transition. It's not a risk. Of course, some people, not everybody will win, but most of the people have an opportunity to win. And I would be not surprised, unfortunately, if looking at the solar panel industry, a lot of went to China. Suddenly, other industries just got lost. And with the technology we have today, with extrusion, with a lot of other things on the process know-how, engineering know-how, it has a risk that we will, in a couple of years, not be on top of it, because China has included this topic into their 5-year plan, for instance, which is the new 5-year plan. Recently, there's a lot of shift. Singapore has enabled set the path for new technologies in food to be more open from a regulatory perspective. Israel is fantastic, but I count Israel to more to Europe in the sense of technologies on the early stage on the agri side. But again, there to scale it up, I think there's a risk that a lot of this tech will not stay in the region. So, and then we have the whole discussion about GMO, where I believe, especially the UK, after having gone out of the European Union now, are preparing themselves to be a bit more open for gene editing or stuff like that. So to summarize, our position is very strong in this industry, especially for the scale up, but there's a risk that we might lose part of that position if we don't move fast enough and put it high enough on the agenda, also on the political agenda.
Thanks so much for sharing all of those super valuable insights. Any other interesting findings that you would like just to pop in, like a quick one that you didn't cover during this first part?
Yes, the impact perspective from investors we haven't really talked about, and I think what's very not surprising but great to see based on data on the latest study which we did as Blue Horizon with the Boston Consulting Group, is that the impact on capital employed, so investing in capex in our industry, has way more impact than other industries. I'm comparing that, if you compare that to the cement industry, if you compare that to the electric mobility, even to cement, we are 4 times more impactful in a positive way on the planet. So if you want to invest for impact, our industry is number 1 by factor 3.7, based on certain assumptions, but based on independent data, which was recently calculated and researched. And I think that's a big finding, because a lot of public institutional investors are also looking for fulfilling their targets about impact, but also about ESG, obviously. But if we split the two, but if you look into we trademarked it immediately and say, okay, the impact on capital employed, the return there is much higher for the planet investing in our space than any of the other spaces.
Thank you so much. So let's go into the specific of Blue Horizon. Maybe can you tell us a bit more about what was the initial gap that has been seen and that led to the thesis behind Blue Horizon?
The great thing about Blue Horizon is that we never had to change our DNA. Roger, who founded the company, was convinced that taking the living animal out of the supply chain drives impact, and it's a fantastic opportunity to invest. We've built Blue Horizon along these lines. So our domain expertise, and we 30 people roughly right now. The domain expertise is really about alternative proteins. We don't do fish farms. We don't do insect proteins. We have a clear-cut line of what we do and what we don't do, because of that's our expertise. So the basic belief of saying, let's look at the food supply chain that's quantified from day one, having built a quantified market model to say, what are the core technologies? Where does it sit in the food supply chain? When do we believe will it have impact to drive down costs? We spoke about costs. And I think that's a uniqueness Blue Horizon's built up over the last 6 years, to say, how can we scale and how do we always stay ahead of the curve, to see where when we started, and at the time, $500,000, $1 million investment was very big number into this industry. But we were literally driving up and down the West Coast and meeting these entrepreneurs and say, okay, let's leave the office and let's meet outside of the office and to understand what's really a challenge and to invest in this thing. But that was seed portfolio money, right? And today the numbers have changed. And after having, by the way, we still continue to stay with our roots. So we have a dedicated team working on seed investments, which we do off balance sheet as Blue Horizon, where we have a certain limit of ticket size, so we don't have a conflict of interest, of course, with the other strategies. But the seed strategy is our view into the future. So amongst our quantified market model, we look into what are the technologies, what can we learn, where does that sit, and that's a really great program. So we kept that from day one, and we professionalized it this way. And as an institutional setup, understanding that also the venture strategy, but also growth strategy right now, which is continuing to follow the same logics and the quantified market model. It's just about different risk profiles, which you have in the different buckets. But we believe that we have built a unique setup from scratch, literally, but we've never deviated, and we're very happy that everybody's now picking up this mainstream topic, because when we started, and as I said, none of the banks were covering the sector, Beyond Meat wasn't out there, and so it was a big shift. And to see that all the projections we gave also get supported year after year on a quantified way, to say, what is the basis, how is the market going to grow, what are the the price points, and how is innovation being driven. And that's exactly where we sit. And combining that with a very strong perspective on impact as a value driver, and having a Blue Horizon model to look into impact and split impact out from ESG. It's not how a company operates according to the standards in food. It touches literally all SDGs from the UN, but having a quantified impact model to say we can set a baseline, we can say what are the externalities of impact of this, what the product does, and having a common denominator on a dollar value and saying the baseline, and like you calculate an IRR, we calculate an IQRR, which is an impact rate of return, also for baseline. And this is unique. We have a strong competence behind this, so we can show and prove that everything we do on a double positive mission is for the investors, but also for the planet.
I think it's a good segue for my next questions. Speaking about in terms of impact cash return, or ICR, that's how I call it. Meaning building impactful companies while creating highly profitable business. Do you see any underdogs or subsectors in the food tech in general that you are especially excited about right now?
Right now, I'm very excited about the B2B space and the growth phase of companies in the growth phase, who literally have a product which needs to be scaled, where we can learn from the traditional industry in a way. The biggest challenge to grow this industry is infrastructure right now, and technologies around the infrastructure. So if I take the 2,000 to 3,000 ideas, business plans, or put them next to each other, which we get annually inbound in our market, and I just put them next to each other, it's like, how is this going to scale? It's simply, there's no way on this planet there's enough capacity to actually be anywhere close to that. Of course, that's normal. But we see, we're very excited about anything on the B2B side to be able to support the scale up of this industry, because we're convinced of the supply chain reshaping in the food industry, following major trends globally, not about environment, but also about food security, and seeing companies which have small, great, innovative solutions, which then can feed into existing structures and really bring them down. So to make it tangible, if you have an aeroponic technology which is scalable, and you can plug it into any controlled atmosphere growing setups, and this technology allows you to be 30% more efficient. Suddenly, it's a game changer. And we see these technologies on the earlier side. On the other side, we see a lot of opportunities in packaging, but also all the way upstream in seed genetics, in fungicides, which you ferment with precision fermentation. So these are all some underdogs, which you don't really see because so far there was no story to be told. And what we see now since 5-6 years, you have great founders, you have great tech people who look into specific solutions, and then suddenly they have a story to be told, and it works, and that's fantastic.
So on the opposite side, I mean, like out of all the pitch and the business plan and deck that you see through your desk, I mean, in your opinion, which are the solution or like service or product, and without naming anyone, but that you believe makes no sense whatsoever and sounds like, maybe a waste of time and resource or greenwashing? Do you have an example of, areas that you don't believe in at all or you're not excited about? So meaning both.
I'm excited about the concept of, indoor farming. I really think it's great. We haven't done a single investment in that field yet, due to high valuations recently, and the last year showed some other companies wanted to SPAC at like billion valuations, and they literally had no sales, and the whole concept was great, but we haven't done any investment there yet. Saying yet, we're continuously looking for that. Personally, the team visited globally a lot of these opportunities, but I think it will take a proof of concept that if you want to, grow green leaves, and it's not a high value product, it's not a great product where you convince at the end people do. It's very capex intense. The energy price is very high, so the numbers are challenging to convince investors to be putting money at very high valuations into such concepts. So that's one area so far. I mean, never say never. We look at it, and right now we're looking at 2 opportunities, but let's see what comes out. But that's the whole indoor farming space so far, I think, was a little bit too much on the hype side.
Anything else that you find like it's useless or should not be called food tech, climate tech related, and it's more like a greenwashing thing? Some people say like, green hydrogen. I'm kidding, but anything that you see, like, I mean, tell us what we should not look at.
I believe there's a lot of companies who still believe it's a pure marketing play, who just put a brand on something which is not unique. And for anyone who wishes to be successful in this field, you need to follow the basic rules. So if you don't have a sustainable USP, a unique selling proposition, what's really unique about your product, you shouldn't be looking at it. And nobody needs. I think in the US there are over 220 different companies offering plant-based chicken nuggets today, and I'm not sure next year we'll see another 220 coming, or the 220 will be reduced. I think they will be reduced because ultimately it's just having a commodity and trying to put a commodity with a brand and burning money, but that's not how the world looks like. So what we should not be looking at is just to say, I'm taking an off-the-shelf product, trying to put a brand on it, and trying to be, the times are changing fast. The cycle in this food industry are very fast. I see tons of founders believing in the next generation. Say, okay, let's do some vegan dog food or pet food. It is a booming market, yes, but be aware. Just if you go to any supplier and just put a brand on it, it's not sustainable. It's not going to work. So you have to have something unique. And so anything you feel it's not unique enough, better not look at it.
Thanks so much. So what's next for Blue Horizon?
Impact and returns. For us, it's been a fantastic time, since always when valuations tend to come down a little bit, it's a good moment to invest. We have seen a lot of the growth deals, which we did not do. We did a lot of most of the deals, of course, we did not do in the last 18 months. And we believe that the growth will be driving the impact, and growth deals will be driving, while not leaving out the earlier stage, of course. But I think for us, it's really about attracting more institutional money, more strategic partners into our space, convincing them the facts and returns, track record, and obviously doing fantastic deals to create impact and measure it.
Go ahead. Sorry, interrupted.
No, I think for us, it's really about future globalization. It's about getting institutional money in. For us as a firm, we're specialists in this field. We see mainstream investors asking us to join their rounds as specialists. On the other hand, we don't want others to eat our lunch, so we're trying to be ahead of the curve, and also on the growth strategy to reach a significant size to be able to further develop our position in the space as thought leaders, as a unique combination of a team, and to empower that strength and to increase the global presence.
So, last question on my side. What's your personal view on the climate crisis? Are we doomed? I mean, what would you say to the people who feel demoralized by all the terrible and already visible consequences of climate change today?
I would tell them, be aware about the impact what you eat, because that's what you can change. You can't change what politicians do every day, but I'm sure you can change what you eat and how you eat it, and think about it. And it doesn't need to be more expensive. You can even, be very sustainable in what you eat by changing part of your diet, especially the protein intake. We're not doomed. I'm an entrepreneur, so I always stay optimistic, and I love the level of innovation and speed. However, I must say that we need every dollar is a bullet for impact, right? So everybody who is also trying to support innovative solutions in our space, it's great to be behind it. So as a consumer, do change your diet. Watch us, watch our portfolio companies, the ecosystem globally. We're just in the very beginning, and whatever comes to the market in the next 18 months, it's already tomorrow is changing everybody's lives because of costs, because of availability, because of taste profile, trust potentially, and it will convince step by step more and more people, and then automatically will have a big impact on the climate. Is it enough? No. Right? Is it only? There's no silver bullet in the fight for climate change, but food is the second biggest contributor. We as Blue Horizon are very much in the center of this and seeing how to quantify this impact and drive this. But everybody can make a difference. Just change your plate.
So how can the community of investors, LPs, founders, experts listening to the show can help you?
I think be aware of the opportunities coming up. It's not about us as Blue Horizon, but I think as the big group of investors, support companies along the full life cycle, whether it be lifestyle products on the high end, whether it be basic technologies, seed genetics, everything. There's a lot of a big space to invest. And if you follow the people who have been in this space for quite some time and have a domain expertise, probably they can help you to take certain decisions if you want to be part of this.
Any question I should have asked and I did not for this first part of the interview?
I think we covered quite a lot, no?
Yeah, we covered a lot. So thank you so much, Björn, for your time, your incredible insights, all of this hard work that you put to build and rebuild a better, healthier world and cleaner world, definitely. So thank you so much for coming with us.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Guillaume. Thank you.
Hi, it's Guillaume again. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. As I said, do not hesitate to share an episode with a friend. Also, if you value the work we do for the climate tech ecosystem, here is how you can contribute to it. Today, I'm asking for your support and a donation or sponsorship to make the work of our self-funded team more viable. Even a small contribution means a lot to us. In any case, I will invite you to subscribe to our channels and visit our website startupbasecamp.org to discover more episodes like this one. And get your membership to access all our members' exclusive content. So remember, all of this is possible because of your support and donation. And we want you to be part of this collective movement against climate change. Let's keep in touch, and I hope you will enjoy our next show with us.